Hello and welcome to the social media activity comparison demo video. Now, I've called this a social media activity comparison because I suspect a lot of people are going to use this for social media. It lends itself quite nicely to that. In fact, I myself am going to use it for YouTube to monitor the YouTube videos. But this, in theory, can be used to analyze pretty much any data in a CSV file. All that needs to happen is the data in the CSV file needs to conform to a few rules in order for this to work. But then you've got flexibility to override other things. So let me show you how it works. The principle behind the spreadsheet is to take two lots of CSV data and compare the two and show you what changes have occurred. What it's also designed to do is to categorize your data. So for argument's sake, I'm going to do one for YouTube because what I want to do is I've got a whole bunch of YouTube videos up. Some of them are adverts, some of them are demos for my prime range products, some of them are demos for the basic range products, some are website videos, some are DIY explainer videos. So they're all categorized, and what I want to be able to do is say, well, which one of those video types are more popular? Am I getting more views on some than on others? Which ones of those are more popular than what they quote unquote ought to be? So for argument's sake, if 10% of my videos are adverts and I'm getting 20% of my views on the adverts, then they're doing better than what they ought to because they're getting more of the percentage of views than they take up percentage of space, if that makes sense. So these are the kind of things I want to know, and I know a lot of people want to know these kinds of things. So this one, as I said, it should work for YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, so on and so forth. All you need to do is make sure you get the right data, and I'm going to show you how that will work. So first and foremost, what we do is we give it a project name. Now this can be anything. I'm just going to put in YouTube so that you know what it's for. If you do purchase the spreadsheet and you have a copy of it, you can make as many copies as you want. So you can have one for YouTube, one for LinkedIn, one for Facebook, one for whatever else, Twitter, anything else. So you can make various ones and you just set them up differently to accommodate each batch of data. So now what it says is what's the period 1 start date and end date and period 2 start date and end date, because what the spreadsheet's going to do is it's going to take those two batches of data and compare one with the other. So for the data I've got was the 1st of January 2019 to the 31st of December 2019, and I'm going to compare to the 1st of January 2020 to the 31st of December 2020. Now, yeah, we haven't quite reached the 31st of December. It's on the 16th as I record this, but I've got the data nonetheless up until now. So I'm just going to compare those two as it is for the year. So then what you would do then is you make sure that the data you download, when you select the date ranges on the various websites. Now again, this doesn't even have to be social media. This could be anything. If you've got a CRM system that you can download that with the data conforms, you can use it for that as well. So if you just make sure you set the date range on the downloads to match these, or match these with whatever data you download. So that's the setup. It's fairly easy in the initial setup, but then we go on to the selections and categories and the two batches of data. Now the selections and categories looks quite complicated. I'll talk you through everything here. Don't worry, it's very straightforward. This just lets you set everything out. So it needs the data because at the moment if you click on the drop down list there's nothing in there. So it needs at least one lot of raw data, the first one. So let's have a look at the data, the raw data, and I'll show you what I mean by in the right format. Here's the YouTube data, my YouTube data from 2019. So this has got all the video names down this column here, and that's what I want to look at. I want to look at the videos. I want to be able to categorize these videos into categories. So there's the column for video categories, and across the top here are all the other things like video time, views, watch time, subscribers, impressions, and so on and so forth. So if your data is like this, and you've got the item, or what I would call the entry, that you want to be able to categorize as one of the columns running downwards, and across the top you've got all the different metrics that you want to monitor, with obviously all the different numbers down there. That's the way that your data needs to be. So it doesn't matter whether this is YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, as long as the data is in this format, you're good to go. The times you may have a problem, let's just say you want to download, for example, Google Analytics, and you download where you got each day, 1st of Jan, 2nd of Jan, 3rd of Jan, 4th of Jan. That's not going to be able to categorize because you don't have the correct criteria running down in a column. So let's say you wanted to do, for example, each page on your website. You want to categorize each page on your website and see what your hits were for per website category from one year to the next. Then you need to download the right data where it lists all of your pages and gives you the criteria at the top, and then gives you all the values for that particular period, because that data you can use. So it's not necessarily the websites that it can and can't do. It depends on the data, and often these websites will let you download different batches of data, so you've just got to make sure that you get the right one. So I've got that one set up. So let's get that data. Now when I want to copy this data into the main spreadsheet, I need to make sure that I've got enough columns and rows. So let's just go back to the initial spreadsheet. If I go down to the bottom here, I've got 2,000 rows. So we need to have fewer than 2,000 rows with the data. And I've got all these columns across here, which probably should be enough. However, if you go to your raw data and you've got a heck of a lot of columns across the top here, all you need to do is just delete any of the columns that you're not going to be using. So if I know, for example, I'm not going to be using subscribers, I can just right click and delete the raw data and clear that. So you can delete any that you're not going to be using because you only really need the ones you are using. And if you do the same for the other spreadsheet for the other year, the other thing you just need to make sure is that you've got your headers, and then it goes straight into the data. So sometimes, like YouTube, it had another header in here which was all the totals. I've cleared that. I've deleted that row so that it goes straight from the headers straight into the data that you're going to be using. You don't have any total lines or anything like that. Now, if I copy that data, so I push Shift Control and right and Shift Control and down, I can see it's row 259. So there's plenty of space. Copy. And this is 2019, so I go into the other spreadsheet and in the period 1, and I right click on the top gray cell. I want the headers within the gray and the data down below in the white. So if I right click there, paste values. Not normal paste. Normal paste will ruin your spreadsheet. Paste formulas, all these other things you don't want to do. You want to do paste values. So you're just pasting the data into the spreadsheet and you're not ruining the integrity of the spreadsheet. Now immediately it'll say incorrect selections. That's fine. We're gonna sort that out in a minute with the selections and categories. But before we do that, let's go and get the second batch of data. So now if we get 2020, same story, same data, well, same layout, different values obviously. We go back to the social media activity. We click on the period 2, right click and paste values. Now that the data is in here, what that means is that this selections categories tab is all charged with what it needs to know. It knows the start and end period. It says that they're incorrect selections because you need to make some selections. But first, let's start with the header. Select the header for the entry name description. So this is the main thing, the main items that you want to categorize. So in my case, I want to categorize each of the videos. So what I want is the video title. So when I click that, that warning disappears. It'll tick there, and I'm halfway there. Now it says yes, I've got them all because I haven't selected any metrics or anything. I'll get to the selecting the metrics in a second. The second thing you can do are the categories. Now you can add categories at any time. It doesn't matter if you add them afterwards. But what I do here is I've added the categories how I want to categorize my videos. So you can add up to 20. It gives a little tick. If I were to put in another one, for example, website again, it goes, no, you've got duplicates. You need to correct that. So we correct that. You can select what you put in, go to data and click sort A to Z if you want to sort them alphabetically. Don't move them around because that's going to cause issues. So once you put the categories in, those categories will be available to select later on. I'll show you when to get to that. All you need to do now, once that is all done, these dates would come from your initial page, is select which up to four metrics you would like to monitor. So these are the things that it's going to check the values and go, okay, you've done better this year than you did last year, or whatever the case may be. So what I want to monitor is I want to monitor views. It says, yep, it's found that data. It knows what I'm talking about. I want to monitor watch time in hours. Yep, it's found that. I want to monitor impressions. And I want to monitor click-through rate. Now, at the bottom here, there are a few more settings that you can do, because some of these, like that, doesn't really look particularly great. And also because throughout the spreadsheet, you've got some fairly narrow columns. So things like that, you won't actually be able to see. It'll be too small. You can rename them if you want to. So views, if you don't put anything in here, it'll take what you've got above. So technically, I don't have to put views in, but I'll put them in. Views, let's put here time, and then in hours, impressions, and then clicks per view. So I've shortened the name, and I know what they are. Those will now replace those names on the reports and everything else. That's all fine. The last thing you just need to check up is just double check these two. The first metric is high to low. So in other words, what I'm saying is views are ranked high to low. So the highest number of views obviously the best, the lowest the worst. That's the same for time, impressions, and clicks per view. So that's all correct. If you had something, for argument's sake, like if you were doing Google Analytics and you had bounce rate, obviously the higher is worse, the lower is better. So you want to just switch that round and go low to high rather than high to low. The similar thing applies to sum or average, but what this does is it says these metrics that you're viewing, how do you want to find out the total? So for argument's sake, if you've got views and you've got 10 videos and you've got 10 views on each video, and you've got those 10 videos all in the same category, then you wanted to show 100 views for that category. So that's fine because you want to sum those ones. So you can leave the majority of sum. But for argument's sake, clicks per view, that it shows as a decimal place, but it's actually a percentage. So you don't want to add those ones together. You want to find the average, because if you've got 10 videos, each with a click-view rate of 50%, you don't have 500% click-through rate. You've still got a 50%. So that one you want to use the average. So we just switch that to average. So just double check that these are correct. They will have some data in them. You can only select one of two options for each, but just make sure you've got the right ones based on what your metrics are showing. And once you've done that, as you can see, everything's green, everything's ticked off. It's all ticked, ready to go. So this is now complete. If you remove this data, so if you come back here and say clear this data that you've put in here, these will show up as not found because it can't find in the data, but it may only be temporarily until you put more data in. So that's fine. So that page is up to date. Intro and setup is done. You've got your 2 lots of raw data. That's it. All you need to do now is go to your entry list. Now your entry list, this has got the name and description of all of the videos that it's found. So when I click on the drop down list, it'll give me all the different videos that I've got. As you can see here, all these green blocks are showing there's a new entry. Now, a new entry means that it's found a a video that is not already on this list. So if I scroll down throughout all those green blocks until I reach to the grey blocks, because where it ends and you don't have any more, they turn grey. So if I scroll down to the bottom of the green blocks, you'll see I've probably got about 300. How many videos do I have? There we go, 373. So if I copy down to the bottom of the green, copy, come to the top here, right click, paste values again, not normal paste. There are now a list of all of my videos. That's disappeared because there's no more green ones. Here it's got all the different ranks. So these are the ranks based on views, time, impressions, clicks per view, so on and so forth, for all these different videos. You can sort them, so you can go A to Z. All you need to do now, which I say all, if you've got a lot of videos, it may be a little bit time consuming, but you need to go and select the category for each of these videos. Now I've already done that over here, so I'm just going to copy this data and paste it into the other spreadsheet. If you've already got this information somewhere else, you can do so. Just remember to paste values. So now I've got all the categories for all of these different videos, and I've gone and categorized them. And as you can see here, if you scroll down, you go, there's a green one. What was that? Yeah, the 360 staff appraisal demo video, doing quite well. These are based on the ranks. So where does this video rank in views? Where does this video rank in time? And so on and so forth. The higher up they are in the rankings, the greener they are, the lower down they are, the redder they are, and if they're smack bang in the middle, they turn yellow. So they all change color accordingly. If you'd like to sort by this data, so if you'd like to sort by example views, you can copy that column, paste values into the sorter column, and then sort highest to lowest to lowest to highest. This sorter column is just a temporary thing. As well, remember this spreadsheet isn't necessarily a one-off. You may come back again later on, so that's why I've done it like this. Once you've got this data in here, if you then go and remove these, clear these data sets and put data in for the next year, and you come back to the entry list, it won't ask you for all these things again because you've already put them in. The green one, if you go to the bottom of this list, any new ones will be in green underneath, and you can simply copy that, paste values into here, and just assign the new ones. Any that you've already added will already be here. So it's an ongoing document, so keep this data in. The other thing is, if there are any videos here that are not in either of these two lists, there will appear an X over here and it'll gray it out because it says, well, this isn't being used. You can leave it there, it doesn't matter. If you want to get all the gray ones together, simply copy that column, paste values into the sorter, resort, get all the X's at the top, and then select the ones you want to clear, right click, clear contents to clear them, and then simply resort again A to Z. And you can clear any that aren't being used if you want to keep it as clean as possible. But if you say, well, that's fine, the only reason why they weren't there was because no one watched them, but they're still valid, then leave them in. So this can be updated as you go along. These ones, you can change these data sets. Whenever you change these data sets, in theory, you won't need to do any new selections because everything should work out. Let's say, for argument's sake, YouTube going to be difficult, or whatever the case might be, and they change the header from that to something else. All that will happen then is when you put this in, it'll flag up here saying something's incorrect. You can go to the selections and categories. This will see it say data not found, and you can just simply reselect again which column you're looking for. If they go and they add in some more columns and the views, instead of being here, is now over here, it doesn't matter. Excel will look for it and find it as long as the headers match. And as I said, if it doesn't match, it'll flag up here. You can go to your selections and just reselect the one that you want. If you change the criteria, so if I were to go, instead of impressions, I actually want to do subscribers instead, just remember to check that those two selections are correct for subscribers, and just change the name over here. That's it. So yeah, some of this can be done initially. The intro and setup can be done initially. The selections, this can be done initially with your first batch of data. This update as you add new ones. Obviously, the first time you might have quite a few. On that note, if you are going to be checking data annually, for example, what you may want to do is maybe once a month, just get the data, put it in, bring across the new entries, and just categorize them as you go along. Because then you may only have 10 in a month to do, rather than having to do 120 at the end of the year if you want to keep up with it. You don't necessarily have to run a report and get the report, but if you just bring those in periodically and add them in and categorize them, then it saves you having, like I had to do this morning, where I had to do 373 categorizations. If I did them as I added the videos, it would have saved me some time. But if you have to do them all together, it doesn't matter, because once they're done, you don't have to do those same ones again. And that setup, if you've got your two batches of data and you click on here and that shows a tick and you've selected all your metrics, everything's good. You've then got that report, which is the start, but then you've got the actual main report. Now this report, it shows quite a bit, but it shows it in views like this. So you've got your categories down the left hand side. These are the categories I've categorized. That's the target percent, which means that 17.91% of my videos are advert videos, 30.30% of my videos are prime range demos, etc., based on this data entry list. Now when I go to the comparison, I can see these are my views as a percentage, that's the time as a percentage, that's the impressions as a percentage, and the clicks as a percentage of the overall. So the question here is what percentage of my views are, what percentage of the views are for advert views? 8.89. So if we go down here to the prime range, you can see 30% of my videos are prime, but 76% of the views are for prime range demo. So those are doing really, really well, at least in 2019. In 2020, in period 2, how does that compare? So that went from 76% of the views to 73% of the views. Now, so that shows you what percentage. So these little arrows don't necessarily mean they're going down. What these little arrows mean is it's less than what it ought to be based on the percentage of the videos. Okay, so that's the first table. The second table shows the value of change from period 1 to period 2. So if we actually have a look at the prime range, prime demos again, it went from 76% of all the overall views to 73%. But the question is, how many views was that? Did they get more views or fewer views? Because remember, that's a percentage of the target. But let's just have a look and see. If you scroll down, you'll be able to see the graph. We'll get to this in a second. But those prime demos went from 3,983 views to 5,100. So that percentage increase there is what it shows there, a 28% increase. So you can see whether your actual views, actual time, actual impressions, whatever, have gone up or down from year to year based on the value, not based on the percentage, but based on the actual value assigned to each of these metrics. This one here shows how the portion changes. So for argument's sake, this went from, your prime video went from 76% down to 73%. So that shows the difference in the portion, sorry, not that advert, the prime there. That shows the difference of 2.25% in the portion. So this is how the portion has changed. So there's a portion of each of these categories. But these are how the actual values have changed from year to year. As I said, if you scroll down, you can see your 4 metrics, and you can see the actual values plotted in the graph next to each other, so you can get a nice idea of where your time is, where the views are, and how they've increased from period to period, depending on what you've set. As we said, we've set this for a year, so in this case it's from year to year. So you've got those graphs at the bottom. They'll automatically populate. Those of you who've been watching this whole video would have seen at the beginning this tab wasn't here, and it's miraculously appeared during this last section because I've edited this in. This is something I've added on afterwards. So if you don't have this tab, go and get the updated version from the website. Category and metric. So it's simply just 2 sections here. So you can select any one of these categories and any one of these metrics, and it'll pull up the values here. So if you want to look at something specifically, instead of going to the first graph, the second one, and having a look at the values and coming down here, all you can do is you can come up here and you can say, actually, I'd very much like to see, say for example, basic demo and views. And then it shows you that's what you should have. That's your portion of basic demos. That's what you're actually seeing in views in year 1, in period 1. This is what you're seeing in views in the second period. So you can see it's increasing. And here you can see the first period and second period. So you can see the actual values and how that is progressing. So you can see any combination. Just simply select the one that you'd like to see. And then the graphs will change accordingly and show you what it is, what those numbers are from the first page. So this doesn't actually, if you remove either of them, it just goes blank. So you need to select both in order to view. Yeah, that's just an extra page just to isolate each of them for you, so you don't have to look here if you're looking for something specific. So yeah, that's it. You can keep this running. Keep editing changing this data if you want from period to period. So if you do this monthly, you can then just take period 2, copy and paste values into period 1, and then replace period 2's values. If you do that and you keep this going on a running basis, just make sure to come back to your intro and setup and just change these dates as you go along. But yeah, and then this page here, you can save as a PDF if you want to and keep those reports. This tab, as we said, we're not your entry one. Selections and categories is where all the stuff is found. So if you come here, if you've got categories listed here, you've added metrics here, and everything's green, it's good to go at the top, then everything's all right. So yeah, I hope that works for you. If this is something that interests you and you want something to analyze data, but this doesn't work for your specific data, get in touch. I'm happy to chat about some custom options, even if I remake the whole thing from scratch just for you. So do bear that in mind. But if this works for you and this analyzes the data that you want to analyze and gives you the reporting that you need, then I wish you all the best for your business. Thank you very much and goodbye.